Hey, kiddo. How you doing? You ready for bed? See, you got your jammies on, you're tucked nicely. Did you brush your teeth? Why do I not believe you? I don't know. Alright, come on. Let's see the... Let's see those choppers. Open wide. Ah. Okay. Look up. Oh, and you floss too. Alright. Good job. You know, if you keep this up, you may be the first person in recorded history to ever go their entire lives without having a single cavity. Trust me when I say that is an accomplishment. That is something to be proud of. Now, let's see. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Brush your teeth. You're in your jammies. You're tucked in. What am I forgetting? A story? No, I'm not sure if that's it. Maybe like a glass of water. Okay. I'm joking. I'm joking. Relax. Of course, I'm gonna read you a story. What do you take me for? I'm an old geezer, but I haven't lost my mind yet. Now, I've got a story that I'd like to tell you. Oh yeah, it is a big book, but it's a bunch of stories crammed into one thing. I'm not gonna read you this whole thing, not yet. But there is one story that there is one story out of this book that did resonate with me when I was a younger man, and I feel like if I read it to you, it may warm your heart in ways that it did mine. It might teach you a valuable life lesson. Well, of course, you're not interested in lessons, but it'll be a good story nonetheless. Now, are you comfortable? You need a drink of water? Go to the bathroom? Anything? All right. Uh, all right. I guess I haven't read this in years, so it's just a wave of nostalgia. But nevertheless, I get to read it to you now. 30 Seconds from Now by John Chu. Hmm? I have no idea who John Chu is. I'm guessing he's the guy who wrote this story. I don't know him personally, but he made a pretty good story. I'll tell you that much. Can I read now? Oh, thank you, Your Majesty. Now, 1 second from now, a beanbag will thunk into Scott's left palm. From reflex, his fingers will wrap around it before he'll toss it back up again. The trick to juggling lies not in the catching, but in the toss. The beanbag will arc up from his right hand, but Scott sees his left hand blur. Phantom left hands in the few places his left hand may be 1 second from now overlap with each other, and with his real left hand about a foot above the cold tile floor he's sitting on. The same holds true for the phantom beanbags. They overlap each other, and the result looks nearly as cubic, red, and solid in the air stark against the dorm room's blank walls, as the beanbag does right now, resting in Scott's right hand. He's making a good toss. This catch will be easy. His three beanbag cascade looks to him the way he imagines it must look to anyone else. Well, if they were nearsighted and missing their glasses. I know the feeling. If I took my glasses off right now, I'd be I'd be reading to you the story like this. Well, that's just not a good look for anybody. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. When he makes a bad toss, translucent Scots scatter across the room. It, was that? Oh, translucent means you can see through it, like a window. A window is translucent, so you're able to see through the. Well, actually, now that I think about it, okay, imagine you're able to see my hand. You see my hand? Can you see the candle behind it? Well, you can see the light, but can you see the actual fire? Right. Now, imagine if you could see my hand and also the fire behind my hand at the same time. In order for that to be possible, you would have to see through my hand, making my hand translucent. That's what translucent means. Being able to see through things while still being able to see them. It's one of those hard words that you'll eventually learn when you're older, and it'll make much more sense when you're older, but nevertheless, it's being able to see through things while still being able to see the things that you are seeing through. Right? Does that make sense? Alright, good. Now, you made me lose my place again. We haven't even left the first page. Hold on. Okay. When he makes a bad toss, translucent Scots scatter across the room. They reach for beds on either side of him, lunge for his or his roommate's desk, and dive over the bed for the closet. They all stretch for the myriad translucent bean bags, raining from the Suko ceiling. I personally don't know what Suko means. I'm assuming it means a certain type of ceiling. The bean bags threaten to knock over desk lamps, bury themselves in acting textbooks that line his closet shelf, and smack against the window blinds. A desperate enough toss, and a phantom beanbag may fly through the doorway into the hall. He does not need his time-skewed senses to know that he'll eventually make a bad toss. It's hard, as hard as he tries to keep his sight solid, to make his life predictable, or knowing what's going to happen. He will drop a beanbag. That's why he's sitting on the floor. It's easier to pick up dropped beanbags that way. 5 seconds from now, someone will walk past the open door of his dorm room. Scott doesn't recognize him. He's just arrived at the university and can barely recognize his roommate. A long-haired rail of a man who left him to eat breakfast in the basement cafeteria. The man who will walk past the door is about the same height as the bulletin board across Scott's room. His thick body will block what he's posting from view. His dark hair will lie on his head like a mane. Looking at the man's back, Scott sees a rounded teddy bear quality to him. What attracts Scott, though, is the man's clarity. Uh, Scott can read the man's t-shirt. It lists films the Department of Media Studies screened at the film festival this past summer. 5 distinct hands will splay to hold his flyer in place as the other hand pushes pins into the cork. His actions show none of the uncertainty, the blurriness that everyone else shows. It's been years since anyone has looked so clear to him. The future is messy. Scott's senses feed him all possible futures at once. He's learned to wander, only a few seconds ahead. That's close, but it's still not normal. This man, though, is a relief to his senses. He makes everything clean. Scott wonders, for how long can he ogle this man? And if he'll ever walk by the room again. He untethers his senses, and the future rushes in. 30 seconds from now, the man, when he turns to leave, will see Scott juggling. He will rip the flyer he posted off the bulletin board. The dorm room door will bounce against the closet wall when he knocks on it. The boom will puncture the punctuate. Thank you. See, you're getting smarter already. Stop it. That's my job. The room will punctuate the bounce. The man will stare at the door. Chagrined. The man will stare at the door chagrined. That means, I assume that means a bit embarrassed. But, Scott finds himself even more like a teddy bear from the front. Oh, I gotta do voices now. Alright, teddy bear. Hi, I'm Tony. He'll shrug as if to say that he didn't know his own strength. How long have you been juggling? No alternate phrases or completely different sentences overlap Tony's words. Scott hears what Tony will say as clearly as if Tony were speaking to him now. Oh, okay. Oh boy. 5 years? Juggling taught him to control, to work in the now. Why? My senior project. Tony's hands will play with his crumpled flyer. Can I come in? Tony's smile will be warm, and Scott's a sucker for a warm smile, to be honest, and so am I. Scott will nod. Here's the deal. Tony will toss his flyer into the wastebasket. I want to be the next Fellini. I need a juggler, Fellini. I want to be the next juggler for my senior project, and I want you. Oh, I need a juggler. I definitely need another set of glasses. Oh, no. Well, maybe that'll work. Hold on, let's see. No, that's not gonna work. Thank you, anyway. Besides, you need those more than I do. What voice did I give him? Teddy bear, right.
I want to be the next. I want to be. I want to be the next Fellini. I need a juggler for my senior project, and I want you. He will dig a figure. He will dig a finger into Scott's shoulder. Phantom beanbags will fall around Scott. Interested? Don't know enough about your senior project. A beanbag may fly 2 inches from the left of Scott's left hand. His juggling is blurry, but his words to Tony sound as clear as Tony's words to him. Also, the Department of Theater and Dance has a mixer tonight at the atrium of the Center of the Arts. I should find out about everyone else's projects too. Stop by tomorrow, maybe? Sure. Tony will look disappointed as he backs out of the room. Tomorrow. About 9 hours from now, the roommate will be downstairs partying with his friends. He will have mentioned something to Scott about either jello shots or kamikazes, and Scott will have said no. The dorm room will be dark and empty when its door unlocks. A hand will fumble for a light switch. It'll be Tony's. His other arm will be around Scott, trying to slow his breathing. What happened to you, anyway? Tony will set Scott's keys to the closest desk. When Scott pulls away, Tony will let go of him. One moment you're standing by yourself in the corner of the atrium. The next moment you can't breathe. Scott will have already plucked his bean bags, sitting next to his keys, from his desk. Sitting on the floor between the beds, he'll juggle. I didn't expect so many people at the mixer, Scott will say. He doesn't do well in crowds. Bad trait for an actor. The multiple alternate cells fill the room, and their cacophony sounds like the chaos of all future conversations heard at once. That noise is not the certainty of rehearsed lines and preset blocking on stage. It's what he's worked so hard to avoid, and what he doesn't hear when he's talking to Tony. Tony will sit on Scott's bed. His gaze will follow the beanbags up and down. Better now? Tony will lean forward, his hands on his thighs. I can stay for a while if you want, to make sure you're okay. You don't need to do that. To Scott, the beanbags look nearly as sharply defined as Tony. I'll be fine. Of course I don't need to do that. He'll open his palms to Scott. I don't need to do anything. You don't even know my name. Which is? Tony's face will hang expectantly. Scott. Right now, he's staring at Tony, but about 9 hours from now, he'll be studying the bean bags as they arc through the air. For now, I just need to be alone and juggle, okay? Fine, Scott. You haven't seen the last of me yet. Tony will point his finger repeatedly at him. I will get you in my movie. Tony will back out of the room again. 4 days from now, Scott will have his jacket on, his juggling gear in his backpack, when the dorm room door will rattle with a polite knocking. It'll be Tony. His right hand will clutch a paper bag. The smell of roasted chicken and cornbread will waft through the doorway. "Hi, Scott." Tony will smile, and the rest of the world will dim a little. "Doing anything tonight?" This will be the third day in a row Tony has stood at Scott's door trying to have dinner with him. Right now, parsing the future. Scott wonders why. Oh. Oh, okay. Right now, parsing the future, which I assume means in this very, so this is all happening while Scott is still juggling. This is like future, seeing into the future, seeing what's going to happen. This is all happening while Scott still has the beanbag in his right hand, and he is yet to toss the beanbag into his left hand, like it says at the beginning of the story. And at this moment, while he's still juggling on that first day, he's wondering, why is Tony so insistent on having dinner with him? Don't look. Maybe they will also talk. Maybe they will have also talked elsewhere. He can't hear those conversations unless he also goes there to listen. Or maybe Tony will need a juggler really bad. Or maybe Tony will need a juggler really badly.
Getting a quick bite down at the basement, and I'm going to the juggling club.
Tony will look disapprovingly at Scott, but he will only be able to keep it up for a second before he'll smile. The power of Tony's smile worries Scott. "You don't want to do that." Tony will hold the paper bag. "Real food. They're serving yellow stuff and brown stuff in the basement. I checked. Besides, I have to tell you something about my senior project." Scott will look back at the room and sigh. His roommate will have used the floor as his closet. The roommate will have used the floor as his closet. In 4 days, he will know exactly what his roommate has scattered on the floor. Right now, Scott's time-shifted gaze, clothing of some sort of lies smear over. Clothing of some sort lies smeared over the tile, like a gray carpet. Tony is unusual in that Scott can envision him distinctly even 4 days from now. The yellow and black checkerboard of Tony's button-down shirt is hilarious, but on him, it almost looks good. "Scott, you know that you don't come close to blocking the door, right? You know you don't come close to blocking the door, right?" Tony will pretend to jump to see over Scott. "I can see you just fine. Just tell me none of the underwear is yours." Scott, you know you don't come close to blocking the door, right? Tony will pretend to jump to see over Scott. I can see you just fine. Just tell me none of that underwear is yours. Scott will step aside and they will sit opposite of each other on the tangle of sheets and blanket covering his bed to eat chicken, cornbread, and beans. Oh, that sounds good right about now, actually. The juices will dribble down his chin. The sweet, salty, tender chicken is everything he's already misses about real food. The movie is about a charismatic, womanizing director. Tony will gesticulate with his fork. That means moving it around as he talks. Tony will gesticulate as with his fork and a piece of cornbread. The concept, the conceit is the situation is that the world is a circus. We'll shoot in black and white. Scott will listen intently, facing Tony at first. As the conversation wears on, they'll be talking about Hemingway, Fitzgerald, and the Jazz Age. Tony's gaze will invite Scott, and he won't refuse. He'll find himself resting against Tony's chest, within the embrace of Tony's arms. The juggling club will meet him then. The juggling club will meet then break. The juggling club will meet then break for the night without him. 2 weeks from now, Tony will swap rooms with Scott's roommate. Tony will have suggested that this will be more convenient for everyone. No games with ties on doorknobs to show who is where. No games with ties on doorknobs to show who's there. Oh, it's something you'll learn when you get to college yourself. I'm not going to be the one to tell you. Your parents would kill me. Movie posters will cover the wall. Scott does not recognize most of them yet. Maybe he will in 2 weeks. Right now, studying the walls that will be, he recognizes only Roma, La Dolce Vita, and 8.5. I'm assuming those are all fancy films, fancy foreign films. But, yeah, there'll be posters of movies all over the wall that Scott only recognizes a few. Scott's stuff will dominate their room. No, sorry. I'm messing up their names already. Tony's stuff will dominate the room. All Scott has brought with him to school are his clothes, a laptop, and his juggling gear. He sees Tony's stuff as clearly as he sees Tony. Cases of lights, cameras, and lenses will sit against their own wall. A refrigerator will hum between their desks. Reference texts will fill Tony's closet, along with hangers of perfectly placed clothes. To make space for everything, they will have their beds. They will have bunk beds, one on top of the other. To make space for everything, they will have bunk beds. Not that they expect both beds to be used. Their shirt Their shirts they'll wear will become sticky with sweat as they move Tony in. And the smell assaults Scott. After they finish unpacking, Tony will take off his shirt as he struts to the refrigerator. He'll hand Scott a beer. Scott will stare at him, puzzled. You've never had a beer? Wait, hold on. You've never had a beer before? Tony is saying this, okay. You've never had a beer before? His face will contort in a incredulous scowl, in a judgmental scowl. This will be the perfect drink after moving lots of heavy boxes. Trust me, you'll love it. Scott will be so parched, so thirsty, that he'll barely notice any bitterness. By the way, side note here, as you get older, you'll eventually want to taste beer at some point. Gonna give you a warning now, alcohol tastes terrible. It'll make your brain feel fuzzy and loopy for a few hours, and then once that's over, you will get a headache like you wouldn't believe. Not worth it. Wouldn't recommend it. I mean, yeah, all the adults are trying it, but, adults are stupid. Remember that. Adults are just as smart as kids are. They've just been around more and they've seen more things. Just trust me on this, alright? Alcohol's not worth it. Anyway, astringency. Astringency. Now that's a word I haven't seen in a while. Rides on bubbles that explode in his mouth and flow down his throat. His second sip will be a chug. Hey, don't drink it all at once. Tony will hold his own bottle out to him. To my, among other things, best buddy. Scott will nearly choke on his beer. Tony will pound Scott's back. When Scott's finished coughing, he'll find Tony's left arm around his shoulder. What's the matter? Tony will squeeze Scott's shoulders. Didn't you ever have a best buddy before? Scott didn't. High school was an acting experience. Camouflage. Pretending he never had all the things people might... Pretending he never heard all the things people might say. Pretending he never saw all the things they might do. Pretending he was what everyone else expected. About 4 weeks from now. We're still in the moment where Scott is juggling. He hasn't met Scott yet. Scott has not met Tony yet. He's still juggling. He has yet to throw the beanbag from his right hand to his left. He's still seeing the future. Was that? Yeah, it is like Garnet character from that show, Steven Universe. Yeah, she's just like that. Except, imagine, she is, Garnet is like a gemstone that was made to be able to handle that. Now imagine growing up with that as a human. Like being able to see everything all at once. That is, even at my age, I can only imagine what that's like, and that is a nightmare. But, but yes, you are correct. It is a lot like that Garnet character. Anyway, back to the story. About 4 weeks from now, Scott will be on the floor in his pajamas, juggling, waiting up for Tony. The door will rattle against the jamb several times before Scott hears the keys insert into the lock. Scott likes to keep the door locked. Tony always assumes that the door will be unlocked. Scott, through his time-shifted sight, has seen Tony forget the door will be locked several times already in the 2 weeks since they've started living together. Where have you been? Scott will say, stifle a yawn, trying to hold a yawn back. He will catch his bean bags, then rub his blurry eyes. I need to tell you something. I'm starting production. I'm starting production on my movie. Tony will drop his backpack on his desk. Are you okay? Tony will wrap himself around Scott on the floor. He'll kiss Scott on the cheek. Hmm? Well, yeah, that's not what it says, but scratch that. He'll kiss Scott on the cheek. Hmm? Oh yeah, it's Hmm? Hmm? Oh yeah, it's they're one of those gay couples. Hmm? Oh yeah, they get together. Yeah. Anyway, oh yeah, they become boyfriend and boyfriend or boyfriends. Hmm. Anyway, Scott will share with Tony the secret he's never shared with anyone else. Something I want you to know about me. Scott's words will be slow, as much from fear as from tiredness. I sense future sights, sounds, whatever I will sense the present, while I sense the present. I sense future sights, sounds, whatever, while I sense the present. You know the future? Tony will laugh. Tell me that one of these days I'll get all the locations for my movie sorted out. I don't know the future, Scott will say. It's like my body is jet lag compared to my senses, and all possible futures stack on top of each other. Scott will lean back into Tony. Wherever I am, I experience all things that may happen. The more likely it is, the clearer and stronger it is.
When I'm near you, the future clears. I never see alternate yous.
I never see alternate yous either.
Tony whispers. Tony's whispers will brush Scott's ear and undercut its gently mocking tone. As Tony stands, he will squeeze Scott's shoulders.
You're tired. Go to sleep. I'm making myself tired from the story. Goodness. Goodness gracious. You want to read the rest of this to me? I'm joking. Okay. Okay, relax. Alright. You want to read the rest of this to me? I'm joking. And, we're almost done anyway. We've got about 2 more pages to go. Some 50 days from now, Scott will wake at the door crashing back and forth against the jab. This will not be the first time Tony will return without his keys. Nights when Tony needs a juggler on set. This will not be a problem, but when the juggler is not a large part, Scott will stumble to open the door. Tony will march in, forcing Scott back until he's crushed against the bunk beds. What the heck is the matter with you? Tony will launch his backpack across the desk. When it lands, a sheaf of paper will scatter and a few pens will crash on the floor. How many times do I need to tell you? When I'm not in, the door stays open. I don't want anyone else to sneak in while I'm asleep. Scott's voice will be small. They will have been building this conversation. They will have been building to this conversation for weeks. We're not supposed to leave the door open. If you can actually see the future, Tony will say, folding his arms across his chest. Shouldn't you know if someone is going to sneak in while you're sleeping? Scott rolls his eyes. He will have lost count how often he has to explain this. I don't want my senses any further ahead than they have to be. I never see what will be, I see everything that may be. Well, you I always see clearly, but you're special. You stupid man. You've got it all worked out, don't you? You get to be a special snowflake and never have to prove it. For an instant, Tony will blur and scatter. Scott now, sensing almost 2 months ahead, has never seen Tony do this before. Tony, like everyone else, has multiple potential futures. Until now, however, Scott has never seen them. As translucent Tonys scatter around the room, so do translucent Scotts. One Tony slams a Scott against the wall, punching him in the stomach. Another hits Scott while they stand. Another step back towards the closet, the desk, Tony's film gear, turning away from Scott. Others stare at Scott stunned. Only one lays his arms around Scott,
gently stroking his back. Scott and his future self both feel all these alternatives at once. His mind reels from the shock of pain breaking against his nose. The salty, metallic taste slides down his throat. Even though he may not bleed that night, Tony's potential punches to his torso stun. And even if they never happen, they will still knock the wind out of Scott about 50 days from now. Simultaneous with the pain, Tony's phantom, gentle arms caress him. Phantom whispers, like rustles in the leaves, soothe him. An instant later, Tony will snap back into focus as the phantom's Tony's collapse back into the real one, and the phantom Scott's collapse too. Tony will stare at Scott, his jaw slacked. His gaze will sweep over Scott, taking in the grimaces, tears, and the body twisted in pain from the futures that Tony will not have chosen.
I'm sorry I didn't believe you.
Tony will caress Scott, his arm moving smoothly across Scott's back.
I will never even think about hurting you again, I promise. The actors who I picked are real jerks, but I shouldn't take it out on you. I'm sorry.
Tony will be unusually attentive that night. It means paying attention to one's feelings and one's personal needs. He won't press, though, when Scott refuses the attention. 3.5 months from now, both closets will be empty, so this is the end of their college semester, which takes place for 3 months. Tony's gear will be stacked in black boxes, almost exactly where Scott is sitting right now. The future Scott will be sitting on the bottom bunk, cross-legged, folding his shirts. His pants will already be packed in a suitcase sitting in his desk. The refrigerator will be empty and unplugged, its door slightly open. The dorm room will swing open and clang against the wall. Tony, wrapped in his winter coat, will look like a snowman a 5-year-old might make. As far as Scott's time-shifted sight has shown him, Tony will have been true to his word. He will not have hurt Scott. Tony will have reached for a box of lenses, then stop.
Are you ashamed of me?
Scott will look at him. What? Scott will look at him. That is a misprint. Scott will look up at him. What? He will drop his cast t-shirt from the theater and dance department's fall musical onto his lap. Why would you think that?
You never bring any of your friends here.
His gaze will sweep past him like a final exam.
You do have other friends, right?
Scott will look at his beanbags on his desk, his acting texts sitting on the closet shelf, and climbing gear lying on the closet floor.
Sure, but this is the room where I don't have to work to untangle my This is the room where I don't have to work to untangle my senses. bringing my friends here will make it like the rest of the world for me.
Tony's face will twist into a frown. He'll pull his chair from his desk and sit in it backwards, facing Scott. Tony's arms will rest on top of the chair's back.
It's ironic that I have to talk to you about the future.
He'll take a deep breath.
You know this will end, right? It's winter break.
He'll shrug.
After the spring semester, I'll be gone, but you'll still be here.
You've met someone else?
Tony will laugh.
No, I only direct like Fellini. No, I only direct like Fellini. So I guess Fellini was like a director, or like a fancy director or something. 6 months from now, I'm going to graduate, and you should keep your options up. 6 months from now, I'm going to graduate. You should keep your options open.
Scott's brow will furrow. He'll look at the boxes of gear, stacked ready to go.
You're moving out? You're moving out?
He'll puck up his t-shirt and twist it in his hands.
No, of course not, Scott. And you're not... No, of course not, Scott. And you're not moving out either.
Tony will sit next to Scott, his hand on Scott's shoulder.
If you want to keep dating, I'm completely willing. As much and as often as you want. For as long as you want. But us? If you want to stay together, I'm completely willing. For as long as you want. But us? It's going to end in 6 months. You have lots of possible futures, and they probably don't involve me. Just saying.
Scott's eyes itch. His t-shirt will be a pretzel in his hands.
Can you leave me alone for a moment?
Tony will nod. He'll stand, avoid the top bunk, his face apologetic. His hands will slap on his topmost box of gear. With a grunt, he will heft it up out of the room. Right now, back at the beginning of the story, right now, the beanbag thunks into Scott's left hand. His eyes still itch, and he feels the grief he will feel again at the end of the semester. A ghost Scott moves to shut the dorm room door. If he closes it, he and Tony will never meet. Tony will never learn how to hurt Scott in a way that only he can be hurt. Tony will never hurt him in a way that anyone can be hurt. Scott sighs. All he's done for years is hide. He's already lived that kind of hurt. He throws a beanbag into the air and waits for the man with the flyer to arrive. He's seen the movie of his life. Now he'll live the whole thing. Well, looks like he went to sleep before I could. Good night, kiddo.